Okay, hello everyone and welcome to Top Tips for Archaeological Graduates. I'm very pleased today to welcome Katie, who is a pottery specialist for Wessex Archaeology. Welcome Katie, how are you today?
Hi, very well, thanks Penny.
So thank you for coming along. I'd love you to talk a little bit at the beginning about your job as a pottery specialist. What are some of the things you do and what's your kind of day-to-day job like?
Yeah, so pottery specialist for me is a bit of a misleading job title. That's what I'm employed as, but I actually work with pretty much all archaeological artifacts. So my role really is taking a look at anything that the field team find out on their sites during commercial archaeology excavations, providing dating information, analysing those artifacts and seeing what they can tell us about what was happening on site, who was doing what kind of activities, what periods were we looking at, and yeah, what it really tells us about the past.
So what are the kind of things that you enjoy most about your job? What are the kind of things that really give you a kick on the day-to-day? What's exciting?
Well, my job is really varied. So obviously we don't dictate what comes into us. So one day I can be looking at Iron Age pottery, and the next it could be medieval metalwork. I do coins, fire clay, worked bone items. So yeah, I get to see all of history, all of prehistory, and kind of every conceivable type of artifact, which is brilliant, really.
That sounds great. It sounds, if you loved working hands-on with artifacts, it would be a fantastic position to be looking for. Can I ask then the other side of that is what is challenging about your role, or what are the things that you perhaps enjoy less?
It's not so much that I don't enjoy it, but the big challenge is that variety does come with a huge amount of knowledge that you have to pick up. So you need a general background knowledge on pretty much everything. All the kind of different pottery techniques and terminology, and yeah, basically the ability to identify anything and everything and date it, which it can be tricky sometimes, and luckily I work with some very wonderfully knowledgeable specialists so that we can almost spot date by committee, if you like. So we can get as many opinions in as possible and really learn from each other, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are days where you are stuck with an assemblage going, I don't know what this is, what am I doing here? Yeah, and then there are other days where you've got, you know exactly what you're doing, and where to look for the info. So
that's nice. So it's a little bit of working independently, but also team working as well. Even though you're not out in the field, you've still got a team of people that you're working with. That's really, really great. So can I ask how did you get into this role? How did you become a pottery specialist at Wessex?
So I first started working with finds in general even. Straight from university, I started volunteering for the Portable Antiquities scheme when I was still living in York, actually, just at the museum. I started gaining experience with York Archaeological Trust, washing finds there. I'm really just getting as much hands-on experience as I possibly could. I mean, I graduated in the middle of the recession in 2009, so jobs were few and far between. But that volunteering work really gave me the kind of road that I wanted to travel down, and it gave me that experience. And so from there, I got a training position with the Portable Antiquities scheme with the Institute for Archaeologists. They really wanted to start training up find specialists. And even now, over 10 years down the line, we're still not seeing many find specialists come through. So it is an area where we could really do with more students kind of specialising, really. So got a training contract with them. So moved down to Somerset. Eventually worked my way up to Finds Liaison Officer over in Essex, and then took a sideways step into commercial archaeology, and they started. So I'd worked with metalwork up until this point mostly, and then when I moved into commercial archaeology, I got the chance to train on pottery, and I haven't really looked back since. So yeah.
So you moved around quite a lot in the UK, Somerset and Essex, but you've built up a fantastic track record of different experiences. And I guess there are similarities between studying one type of objects to another. Although you're working in different materials, you might be transferring, you still want to know the date and how it's made, and who used it, and those kinds of questions.
And some materials are easier for that than others. Things like pottery, you get a lot of regional variation, but for metalwork you don't get as much. You can work pretty much wherever with that.
Well, that's good to know. That's good to know, Sam. One of the things we've talked about in the past is that you have a disability, and you found that Wessex has really helped with that. And I know we have some students who come through with a disability who are concerned about going to work in an archaeological sector. And I just wondered if you would like to talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, so I actually have a visual impairment. I have an eye condition which degenerates. So I have good days and I have bad days when it comes to seeing. And that really started to develop probably about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And I found that, Wessex have been absolutely brilliant. They've been really supportive. They give me the time off that I need to go to my hospital appointments. But also they've really kind of provided what I need to get my job done. So when all of this started, I was very concerned that my career would be limited. But they've provided bigger screens so that, just day-to-day little changes that have really made my job so much easier. So having a bigger screen means I'm not struggling to focus as much. And my job involves a lot of microscope work. So I have a microscope at home now, which means that, I can spread my work out. I can take a break when my eyes get tired. I can go do something else. And I've got voice to text translation software now as well, so that I can basically just talk at my laptop rather than having to sit typing and reading, which can put quite a bit of strain on. But yeah, so they've been really supportive. And it's not, I think there's a lot of understanding in archaeology now about individual needs. So there's a lot more kind of personal assistance that can be given. So it's not so much a barrier, I think, to going into archaeology.
That's really fantastic to hear, and to hear from you who's had that experience within the sector as well. Thank you. So maybe we could turn now to talk a little bit about your degree and your time at York. What kind of things do you think you got out of your degree, both of, I guess, the kind of subject knowledge, but also those transferable skills as well?
Yeah, so I think the biggest was something I genuinely at the time didn't think I would need, but we did a computing module that was very much Microsoft Access based, and even back in 2009, Microsoft Access was an old-fashioned computer system. And I was sat there going, we're never going to use this. It's going to, it will have been replaced. I use Access probably 3 to 4 times a week in my day job. And I am so grateful that I had that understanding, because we do manage a hell of a lot of data. We work with vast amounts of artifacts, all of which need their own record. So we work with lots of spreadsheets, databases, and we tie into work that colleagues across the department do. So my database links up with the context database that the field team create. And so you've got to be comfortable in managing these kind of packages and also large amounts of data. So I think that comfortably that I got from that computing course has stood me in brilliant stead. And so other kind of skills, I was lucky at York to do an illustration module. That was an elective module at the time. I'm not sure if it's still going ahead, but that's given me a really good grounding to be able to do kind of basic drawings. We have an illustration team at Wessex Archaeology who are absolutely fantastic, but that module gave me the kind of background understanding so that I can provide really detailed notes for them. And it just kind of makes explaining what you want from somebody else so much easier. And actually I found York's degree content covered such a wide period base and kind of wide area that actually it just gave me a really good background knowledge that meant moving around the country wasn't quite so daunting as it might have been.
I think we call those modules researching archaeology and communicating archaeology now, but they're still part of the curriculum. You come back, I'm sure you'd recognise some of those skills within. Yeah. So one of the other things that you did while you're at York is that you helped found the Posthole student online journal. So I'd love to talk to you a little bit about that. How did that come about, and do you think that's been useful in terms of developing your skills?
Definitely. So the Posthole was born out of just general discussions with friends, to be honest, and a few of us kind of sat down and said, you know, we're doing all this research, but actually wouldn't it be nice for that work to go somewhere? And at the time there wasn't that many kind of, you know, things like this. There wasn't that many interviews with actual archaeologists because there was redundancies happening left, right and centre. So the Posthole was just a way of kind of getting people to be able to talk about their research, have that kind of connection with people in the archaeology world. And I think, well, we were told at the time, oh, it's been tried before, you'll be lucky if you get a couple of years out of it. So I'm really quite pleased to see that it's made, 10 years now, over 10 years. So that was it was just a let's see and hope kind of situation, but it has been useful actually, because one thing it did do was push me out of my comfort zone when it comes to talking to people. So right at the start of my career, I was having to go to people at conferences and go, hi, I'm new to this world. Could I have some experience? Can I get some volunteering with you? And I was terrified. But actually, I'd already been doing that with the Posthole. I'd already been contacting people saying, hi, can I interview you? So it was a good way of making contacts for one. And also it meant, well, I've already done this before. Actually, it's not that difficult to go and say, this is who I am and this is what I want to do. Can you help me? And also editing work has become a big part of my life, my career. So I also now edit data sheets and newsletters for the Finds Research Group, who are they're a research group looking at finds from kind of the post-Roman period all the way through to late post-medieval, early modern in some cases. So those kind of like refining editing skills are, I use them all the time now. So,
That's really great. And 10 years of the Posthole is something to really, really celebrate. It's great to get to speak to one of the people who founded it that time ago. So to wrap up our conversation then, what advice would you give to graduates who want to go and work with finds or become a pottery specialist?
I think enthusiasm's a big one. Get those skills, go out, talk to people, as terrifying as it is, but try and get some voluntary experience behind you whilst you might not have a lot of other stuff going on, because once your focus switches to paying your rent and when you're outside of that uni, I know you pay rent at uni, but once you're kind of out in the real world, as it were, it can be very easy to kind of lose your time to stuff that's just focusing on the basics. While you've got free time, it's really important to get those skills. And it also gives you contacts. I've been on the hiring panel, and when names come up that I go, oh, I went to that university, I've seen these people, they talked to me at a conference, it's just that little trigger that makes people go, oh yeah, okay, they know what they're talking about, that's great. So I think it's really important to kind of make those connections as soon as possible. And actually, I've taken people on for paid work who have volunteered for me because they've been doing the work. I know that they're capable of doing the work for me on a paid basis, and that's how it should be. It should feed into paid work if those chances are available. And I think to not be so tied, if you can. I know circumstances for everybody will be different, but moving cross country for a job for a couple of months wasn't my idea of a good time. It was a good couple of 100 miles. I didn't have a car. The pay wasn't great, but it was the first step on a ladder that has given me my career. And just being able to go, I'm going to take a chance on this job, I'm going to take it and go, really kind of opened all my doors for me. So you might end up working in places that you absolutely hate, but the job is great. And if your day life is good, sometimes you can kind of overlook a lot of other kind of not so great times. And also not to be dispirited, really, because the job markets are tough. You are going for one position in a lot of cases, and there will be other people, always other people up against you. And sometimes you've just got to keep getting those applications in until somebody says, yes, no, that's fine. You've applied for us 15 times, just give her a job. It'll be easier. Which is definitely, I think, how I got some of my my PAS jobs. You know, you end up finding that you're going to interviews and seeing people you've seen at the previous interview, and you've just kind of got to go, all right, eventually my job will come, you know. Someone once told me that you apply for like 1,000 jobs, you get, or maybe not 1,000, let's hope not 1,000. You apply for 100 jobs, you'll get 10 interviews, but you're only going to get one job out of that, and that job's all that matters. So, you know, you've got to, what's that phrase, kiss the frogs to get the prince.
Yeah. I think what you're saying there, kind of like just that sense of determination, that's quite important, but also being open to opportunities where they come. And yeah. I was a field archaeologist when I first graduated. Actually, I worked for Wessex as well, and I moved around a lot with Wessex doing things, but it was just a fantastic experience, and I look back at it as a really important experience as well. Yeah. Okay, so thank you, Katie, so much for joining us today. I think you've given a really interesting interview with some really important points. We don't often get to speak to find specialists, and that's because it's a massive gap. Yes. So if there are students out there thinking about the objects and finds are the place that they're most interested in, we really encourage you to think about that. And thank you to everyone for listening, and join us again for the next top tips for archaeology graduates. Thank you.